Now we're live. So good morning. Welcome to the practice. I just have so many technical challenges in life, in general. But yeah, yesterday was an aborted practice, which was quite emotional for me. That was quite an emotional thing to have to live stream. Was aborting my practice, or rather aborting the stream of the practice halfway through, because I messed up with the sound basically. So this is a rubbishy camera angle, but I'm really hoping that the point of these videos is the content and not the aesthetics, because it took me 2 years to get around to painting my nails because I could never find the time. I don't know how long it's going to take me to get around to removing the crappy chipped nail varnish now that I've finally painted them last Friday. But I don't find the time to do those things and clean them up now that they're looking rubbish. Anyway, so good morning. I'm going to be talking through my own self-practice in the first person to indicate, as usual, that this is me doing my thing and that you're welcome to join. And so the way that I talk through gives you as the viewer, oh wow, the camera angle is so bad. Never mind. Gives you as the viewer kind of instructions of what to do. If you follow along, I say I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and you get to follow along with those instructions. But it's clear then that I'm doing what I'm doing, and that's an invitation for you to do what you want to do. So you might not want to do everything I'm doing, and we certainly will have very different bodies with different histories and different joints and articulate the way that the joints move and different lengths of muscle and different predispositions to certain injuries and all of those things. So yeah, adapt it as you want and really use it as an invitation to listen to your own body in movement rather than to just copy what I'm doing. So, I've been running over time. I'm going to go back to setting a just in case alarm because I'm going to try and keep it under, like around 50-55 minutes, under the hour at least today. And I'm going to start lying down. Noticing how I'm lying to start with. I'm pretty wonky on the funny bit side to side. So small that it's just really a way of listening to what movement there is in my hip joints. As usual for me, I notice a lot of freedom of movement in one side and very little comparatively in the other. So knees going a little side to side, the right knee goes in and the left knee goes out, and then the left knee goes in, or at least it tries to, and then the right knee goes out. So I just feel that my right knee is much more able to move than my left. But whilst I'm doing that, I'm also kind of tuning into this expansive kind of awareness where I can sense more of myself. So as well as the movement of the knees, how much the knees are moving, how much the hips are moving, I'm also sensing sort of gradual releasing in my hips, in the deep musculature of the pelvis. And I feel my pelvis rolling fractionally side to side.
I'm actually going to shift my intention so that rather than sending my knees side to side, I'm now rolling my pelvis a little side to side. So the movement that results is pretty similar, but how I'm making the movement happen is quite different. So now that I switch down to rolling the pelvis, I can let the knees and therefore the hips be a lot more passive. They're not completely giving up their work, because maybe then my knees would fall out to the side when I tilted my pelvis. My knees would fall into a bigger arc if I just collapsed them. But I feel I'm much more able now to soften around the hip joints, particularly my right inner thigh, which was gripping so much before, is now able to soften, because I'm doing the work of rolling the knees by rolling the pelvis. And I'm going so slowly. And I'm now bringing my hands onto my belly. And to roll my pelvis to the left, I'm just kind of gently pressing and sweeping the contents of my belly over to the left side of the pelvis. I take my hands off and I put them on again. And I literally roll my pelvis with my hands. My breath is getting easier. And I'm going to keep doing that, but I'm taking my hands slowly up my belly. I'm not even forcing the movement of the pelvis really, so for me I feel it's kind of rolling a bit easier to the right, and I'm not actually forcing it to go over to the left. If it goes, cool. When it doesn't, fine. Stroking my hands across my lower ribs from one side to the other, using that kind of sweep across of the tissue to help me feel that I can just have this very small shift of weight in the back of the pelvis. And then I get up to the chest. I don't feel that really moving my chest side to side is having much effect on my pelvis. That's fine. I just lower my arms and I take a rest. I shuffled a little bit just to make my back comfortable, because I felt that my upper back was sort of able to spread out a little bit more, but I was stuck to the floor, so I just needed to sort of spread myself out a bit more. I feel much nicer contact now at the back of my shoulders and my upper ribs. I'm just going to lengthen my legs again and see how that feels. And now, even though I still feel a big difference between the left and right hips and sides of the waist, and even though I still feel I have a big arch under my lower back, I'm now able to lie with my legs long comfortably, so that's a change. I'm going to take my socks off, and I want to be quite kind of abstract and free about my practice this morning, and I want to invite anybody watching to really just follow along. I'm aware that a practice which is a bit more abstract and a bit less prescriptive is trickier for somebody who's more used to exercise classes and less used to a creative practice, an improvisational practice, or a dance practice, or other kinds of somatic body work. So, so again, I just think it's worth repeating. Don't feel like you have to get anything right. This whole thing, I'm just going to be listening to my body, exploring what feels good, and that's really all I want to do. That's such a privilege to have a chunk of time to do that. And life is complicated enough, so I just want to, have a chunk of time to explore what feels comforting, pleasurable, whatever that is. And it's a live stream, so, I can't see you, but that means you don't have to worry what other people are thinking in a class, or whether you look like somebody else, whether you look like the teacher. You just do whatever you want. So I just want to swear all the time. I'm so bad. You just do whatever the fuck you want. That's what you do. That's how I would word it. So I'm having my knees bent and my feet standing. I'm going to keep talking through what I'm doing. But again, like, you could move towards what I'm doing and then really vary it in whatever way you want. So starting with my knees bent and my feet standing, taking my knees side to side. I'm listening to the contact of my body against the ground, because that is a huge feedback for me about what's comfortable. And it's worth, again, just last little side note before I get rolling, worth saying that I'm on a carpet with a blanket, so I'm really comfortable. I'm really prioritizing kind of softness and sensitivity more than range of movement and getting strength, really. I don't know what that alert was. Technical issues, there you go. So I've got my feet on the floor, my knees bent, I'm rolling my pelvis. I just know, the reason I said about the mat is I just know that if I was on a hard ground with just a yoga mat, my sacrum would already be getting oversensitive. I would already be feeling a bit too nervy, a bit aggravated and bony around the back of the pelvis. So I'm able to be here on my back and roll around and roll my pelvis, and I'll be on my knees probably quite a bit as well later. And I'm able to do that because I'm on this soft surface. So I'm taking my knees side to side, I'm bringing my hands back to my belly. I feel that there's some tension around my belly. So I'm just kind of working my hands into my tension. Very softly, I'm really kind of firm but soft in the way that I'm touching myself. And exploring that. And at this stage, everybody has tension around the belly. We hold a lot of tension there. There's also a lot of cultural holding, certainly in the part of the world that I live in and have my cultural influence from. There's this idea of holding the belly in, of correcting posture, and that's really not all that helpful for a lot of things. So there's this kind of confusion of, gosh, I'm going off in a kind of cultural lecture. Oh well, that's what's interesting to me today, so I'm just going to go with it. There's really this cultural idea in my part of the world that sucking your tummy in and being skinny, or appearing to be skinny, sucking tummy in, puffing chest out, for women also arching the back and rounding the shoulders is attractive. I mean, it is so dysfunctional. Oh God, I feel all my stress patterns firing just because it stresses me out to talk about it. So I'm just trying to release those things. I'm trying to release the chronic arch I have in the right side of my anyway, not getting into that. So releasing tension, basically releasing tension in my low belly, just giving myself a squidge, letting breath come into my belly, and I'm going to keep doing that and moving my legs around. So I'm just lengthening one leg, lengthening the other, taking the leg in and out, feeling how my pelvis rolls on the floor. And I take my arms up to my shoulders, and I'm just going to keep wriggling my legs and rolling my pelvis and rolling my belly while I get a little bit more wriggly, sweeping my arms up over my shoulders, down my hands, up my arms, over my chest. So I'm not digging hands in for a kind of typical grabby massage, but I'm just sort of waking up the skin a little bit. I wake up my face as well, rubbing my hands over my face in my corona safe environment. Coming up into a little bit of a sit up while I curl up my head. I'm kind of like pulling the skin from the upper back, up the neck, over the crown of the head, and I'm still rolling on the floor. I'm not in a fixed position. And I lengthen my legs and reach my arms up. So I'm really just wriggling, rolling my weight around, feeling my body against the ground, and using my hands to give me a sensation of, the state of my muscles, how awake I can make my skin feel. I'm going to my legs now. So I've just found my right foot and worked down the right calf to the right knee. I'm working down the right thigh to the right hip. And that leads me back up to the waist and the low belly, which is where I started. Don't want to miss out the pelvis, the sitting bone. Why don't we get taught where our sitting bones are in school? It's like basic. It's so basic. We should be teaching little kids, here are your sitting bones. This is your basic support. Kids know where their feet are, but they don't know where their sitting bones are. And it's a big anxiety support if you can locate your sitting bones and drop your weight down into your sitting bones. So, anyway, basically just feeling up my right leg, and rolling still, so listening to the support of the floor, how I'm making contact, wriggling, rolling, softening into the floor. And personally I need a little rest, so I've only done one leg, but I just rest for a moment, see how I feel. My contact with the floor is completely changing. That's only possible because I'm really softening and listening to what feels good, rather than being prescriptive or feeling I have to do a certain thing or another, or following a recipe. So reasserting that. I feel a really big difference between my left and right sides in a different way now. Both feel softer. I feel such an easy range of movement in both sides compared to previously. Still my right side feels lighter and softer than the other, so we're going to do my left leg. So as I want to grab my left foot, I can roll anywhere I want, so and my right leg comes up. So really, as I just work around the skin, the muscles, the bones of the foot a little bit, and then hold on to the ankle, work the ankle a little bit. Everything I do, I'm doing it softly. I'm not gonna... I'm doing it softly anyway. To the knee. And everything I do, the rest of my body is just accommodating that. So I'm thinking, okay, I want to cradle the knee. That's what feels good. But all of the rolling, that's just extra. That's just my body accommodating my desire to cradle my knee. And then I want to stroke up and down my left thigh. And I've incidentally lifted my head. Again, that's just my body accommodating what I need to do in order to grope my left thigh, basically. And I lay my head down and I roll to the side. And again, all of the stuff that my right leg is doing, that's just helping me comfortably reach and roll around, grabbing my left thigh. I lengthen and bend my left leg, trying to just move and wriggle, going to the back of the pelvis, finding my sitting bone. Sitting bone's often much narrower than people expect. Certainly mine are super narrow. Grabbing the sitting bone and then keeping things moving, feeling the flesh at the front of the left thigh, the groin. The big bowl of the pelvis, this kind of butterfly shape of the pelvis, the bony bit at the front. Digging my hands in around there a little bit, feeling the crest at the side of the pelvis comes up higher than I would ever expect. And then back to the belly where I started, down over the pubic bone in between the legs. And now both legs holding onto the toes, giving a little wriggle, lengthening out the legs. And now I feel ready to just have a full body stretch, lengthening both legs away, lengthening both hands away, stretching, lengthening, wriggling. And now I want to rest again. After all that, I'm able to lie on the floor. I feel my posture, or acture, as Feldenkrais might call it, or even better, my self-organisation is changing, has changed. Will continue to change. Tucking my t-shirt again. So I'm just going to come back to the idea of rolling. All of this stuff that I was doing with my hands is probably going to just continue throughout the lesson as a sort of secondary thing. It's just a tool. So my own hands can help my own sensation, can help my own movement. As I'm talking, I'm just revising a little bit the upper part of the body. So I've got my knees bent and my feet standing, just grabbing a little bit the hair of the scalp to wake up the scalp, and grab and pull the ears a little bit, squeezing the little kind of, is it cartilage, the ear? I don't really know much about the ears, to be honest. Cartilaginous ears, is that what they are? Huh. Gaps in knowledge, because we don't really tend to move our ears much, so I don't know much about them. So then digging my fingers around the ears, there's all this muscle of the scalp, of the jaw, muscles that affect the eyes, not just around the eyes, but also in the back of the neck, rubbing the back of the neck, gently, firmly, getting to know what feels good for me, finding little lumpy bits that are interesting. Got a lumpy bit on the right side that isn't there on the left side. And rolling my head around so my head can roll on the floor quite passively. And I'm coming down over, just give my arms a little wiggle and a wave, my body a little wiggle and a wave, just to release tension that was building up in my hands then. And then just the last thing about touch is that I'm going to just talk through rolling my ribs around a little bit. And so, for example, my hand under my armpit, I can feel the huge pectoral muscle that turns from the breast into the chest, into the armpit. And I can grab that, but under there are ribs. So I'm just going to pull at my own ribs a little bit and feel what it's like to invite movement up and down the sides of the ribs. And then on the other side I do the same thing, grabbing the pectoral muscles, feeling that can wiggle and waggle and wobble my chest, and then grabbing down the sides of the ribs, just kind of handfuls of ribs, pulling up from the ground in the direction that's easy to pull. So my left hand grabbing my right side and pulling my ribs over to the left, pulling my right ribs over to the left. A side bending action softly. And then I'm just scooting my hands around my chest, feeling, look, I can slide the skin on my chest, and that helps roll my breastbone. So I kind of manipulate my own ribs, my own breastbone. And I come up and lift my head and just keep kind of scooting my arms around so that this reaching and movement of the hands around the ribs can help me come up. I want to do my arms and help me come down again and feel all of the muscles around the torso. There's muscles in the back I haven't got to yet, so I'm placing my hands underneath my lower back and I'm tilting and lifting my pelvis over my hands. I'm pressing my lower back into my hands as I tuck my tailbone underneath, just to push my pelvis up off the floor. And I'm just getting the backs of my knuckles and the backs of my wrists. As I've got my fists under my back, I'm moving my fists up and down, and that means that there's a different fulcrum on which my back is resting as I move my fists up and down, and then my pelvis can lift and lower. And I feel it. This relates to digestion as well. I feel it's releasing a bit of stuff in my belly. I just want to rest there, opening and closing my knees with my fists underneath my back, rolling my pelvis a little bit side to side with my fists still underneath my back. And then I take my hands out and rest again. So I'm doing little bits, little kind of tasters of lots of things that I know I'm going to kind of put all together. The way that I'm using my hands as support, using my hands to cue movement, reaching limbs, rolling, using my contact with the floor, tuning into my own comfort, allowing the body to move into different positions just in order to accommodate the movement that I want to do. So I'm just going to start playing around with my legs a little bit. Where can my legs go? And at the moment I've actually got my hands on my torso still, so that I can feel where does my torso want to go, and I can support myself a little bit. So for example, I'm starting this movement with the legs. I'm trying to play with all sorts of things. I roll side to side. I'm doing kind of one leg at a time at the moment. So the leg can roll me into different places, but when I start to take peripheral parts of me, hands and feet, knees and elbows, also the head, when I start to take those areas away from my center and lift them in relation to gravity, that's going to take more core work. So I don't want to suddenly think core and suddenly block all of the kind of lovely fluidity and mobility that I've got. I do want to be aware that those parts of me are working. They have to work in order to do the lifting of the parts far away. So I'm taking my legs around a bit like a baby to start with. Maybe I'm going to rewind a little bit and just bring my knees in and hug them and roll them and grab onto the feet. Maybe I can just see where my feet can go, keeping my knees a little bit bent. I don't have to push into straight legs. Where can my knees go? Holding onto my feet, just seeing where can my legs go. Exploring lots of different stretches to access here, but I'm more interested in kind of passing through different ways of mobilizing. Feeling my body against the ground. If I find something I like on one side, then I see if I can replicate it on the other side, and it's going to be a different experience, but it's interesting to try and work it out. And then from here, I need to rest for a moment. Going to go a little bit softer, a bit slower personally. From here I just let go of my legs, and I have my arms and legs up towards the ceiling. And I feel the weight drop down through the back of the body into the ground again. I see if I can just soften my arms and legs as much as I want to, as much as I need to in order to feel them comfortable. So, to my own surprise, my knees have now bent all the way in. I feel very aware of my sitting bones opening up, my belly softening. And I'm just gonna, I've got my eyes closed now, I'm gonna start a very kind of spacey exploration, as if my limbs are floating in space. And this kind of spacey exploration is to try and hold on to a quality of softening and letting go whilst I'm actually activating and moving the limbs. So things meaning arms and legs. Things can lengthen and bend. Things can turn in and turn out. Things can move in towards my center and out away from my center. Things can move asymmetrically. Things can oblige my body to roll so that my contact against the ground is always changing. I lift my head and let my head get involved. And I've now got my arms and legs in the air, but I've changed the emphasis so that rather than floating my arms and legs, they just continue to float as a kind of background float. And now my attention is in my center, in all of the muscles of my belly, my ribs, my back. And if I lift my head, more the muscles of my chest. And I'm just using this contact with the ground and floating limbs. And I'm now driving from the center, so turning my pelvis, twisting and side bending my ribs. I can really gather everything in and scoop my belly down towards the mat and lift my pelvis and lift my head and shoulders. Sure, hard work. But everything's gathering in towards the center. Reaching up to gather in. And I've had enough of that. I'm just going to rest for a moment with my legs long. And I'm going to come back to my contact with the ground and tune in again to my contact with the ground and get a bit more luxurious into the ground before getting a bit more dynamic out and away from the ground. So, tuning with my contact with the ground, I'm going to just soften and roll to one side. And I don't even need to feel smooth, like really, it doesn't matter. I could just kind of plonk. I just want to do what feels good, so it doesn't have to be a continuous rhythm. I know that I tend to show things. It's also a phenomenon that occurs when I'm talking through. Everything just goes blah, 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 and kind of pours out and in a flow. But actually I can change the rhythm, I can do what I want, I can stop, I can plop things around and go bloof, it doesn't matter. So I'm trying to be heavy and soft in the ground. And I'm using the rolling to my side and to my belly just to feel my body against the ground. For me, I've got tight thighs and I can feel the thigh muscles rolling against the ground. That's nice. At the same time, I'm letting my belly out. I'm rolling my pelvis. It might be nice to think about this as being like something that would happen while you're asleep. So like, how can I do as if I'm just flopping, heavy, soft breathing, could dribble, waving my legs around a little bit. I just want to really tune into the ground, the support I get from the ground, how I melt into the ground. So I'm lying on my belly now. Sometimes my hands might come onto the ground. That's a little bit of a stronger position. My chest comes back down. I'm rolling all the way over to my second side. Gone past my belly to my second side. So I just get a chance to see what's it like to be lying on my second side. And every now and again, for sure I'm going to find a stretch that I like. So for me, right now, rolling from my second side towards my back, I found my ankle caught around my other ankle, and I find for me that's a big, deep stretch in my right. Well, muscles deep in my pelvis on my right side, basically. So, again, I'm aware that people following might not find the same thing, but my point is that if I find something I like, I'm not trying to push into it, but I'm allowing myself to stay there and explore it. So I'm not going into deep, deep stretches, but I am on the edge of something. I'm on the edge of a deep stretch, and I'm just being soft enough with it that I can stay there and play. I can keep my attention wandering around the whole of my body to make sure that I'm comfortable everywhere, that I don't have this association with finding a stretch and then suddenly tensing everywhere and pushing into it. Instead, I feel, oh yeah, I can keep my belly soft. Oh yeah, I can keep my chest soft. Oh yeah, my other foot is involved. And then I just find a variation of the stretch and it develops into something else. And I find somewhere else where I can feel, oh wow, I can get some real lengthening there that wasn't accessible to me before, but I want to work in and around it, making sure that I'm comfortable. There's something kind of funky going on in the right side of my sacroiliac joint at the moment, so the right side of my right at the bottom of my lower back. So I'm very mindful of that, and I'm softening everywhere I need to and making sure that I don't push into anything demanding. That's 11:40 just in case alarm. I don't want to move, I don't want to get it, I'm in the middle of a thing. Good. So I'm just going to keep rolling, and my point was that I can kind of go towards stretches, but all the time I want to keep softening and giving up. I think my connection's bad as well. Anyway, whatever. Rolling back onto my belly, I got my hands under my belly. Even as I just was talking through that I don't want to do too much, I feel like maybe I just did too much. It's so hard. It's so difficult to know what's okay and what's not, and that's why I'm practicing every day this listening. And because also every day it's different. So I've got my hands under my belly as I lie on my belly, and I'm rolling my pelvis and melting. And I bring my hands to my back and I just help my pelvis roll a little bit. So I'm moving my own glutes with my own hands in order to help my pelvis roll side to side. And I want to get more expansive, so I'm going to spread my arms and legs out. And I'm going to start taking my arms and legs away from my center. So I'm still rolling to my back, to my side, to my belly, all of these different possibilities. And I can curl up into a little ball whenever I need, because that gives me somewhere to go again when I want to spread out. So maybe I spread and roll and I feel the floor. I go one way, I can get a nice twist through the spine, I go the other way, twisting softly through the spine. And whenever I don't know where to go next, I can curl into a little ball, and that gives me somewhere to go, because I'm thinking of opening up. So just think of opening up away from the center, and closing again. And opening up away from the center and closing again. And that can go anywhere. It might just be that I stay as a little amoeba on the floor. But what I'm trying to do is, rather than getting stuck straight away into like abdominal work, like a lot of abdominal, that's a possibility as well. But I just want to continue to use the floor. I want to keep using the floor for support, for melting. And what if my feet push into the floor as well? So I can start to lift my pelvis away from the floor. So there's a possibility for melting into the ground, and then there's also a possibility for pushing into the ground, to come away from the ground. So I find that I'm just going to practice melting into the ground, melting, and pushing away from the ground. Melting into the ground. And it takes a while. It takes a while to melt. It takes a while to let go. I'm tuning in with my whole body. Where else can I melt? And I can push away using the floor for all of the strength and support. Melting. Pushing away. Melting. And pushing away. This could be minimal. Maybe somebody else at home wants to just melt that much and then push away that much. That's nice. Can I take it really micro for a moment? Melting. Where can I let go? How much more of the floor can I have support me? How much more of myself can I melt into the ground? And then where do I start to push away? I feel my pelvis can push into the floor, my hip. I feel my lower arm can. I feel my hand can. I feel my elbow can. I feel my shins can push into the floor. And these soft meltings and pushing away and just help me feel accessing different parts of myself. All of our strength comes from the floor. Pushing down to go up. Somebody said that in a class I was teaching the other day. It made me so happy. They just came up with the phrase on their own. She's like, yes, you've got it. Down to go up. Pushing down in my pubic bone to go up in my chest, head, shoulders, feet. Pushing down the front of my hips. Pushing down my lower belly. Melting and then pushing down to go up. Melting and then pushing down to go up. I feel my ribs one at a time pushing down to lift my head. And pushing down to go up. I don't have much freedom in my front of my hip joints, so I can't do such a nice job at the other end with my legs. I can bend my knees and then I'm pushing down in my thighs to lift my feet. But it's really hard for me to push my pubic bone down and lift my legs long, lift more or less straight legs. So I can try, but I rather just play with ideas around that. I don't want to get into any kind of set exercise where I feel I have to try and do a big movement or do the same thing on each side. My lower back isn't ready for that today. My sacroiliac joint isn't ready for that today. But I still want to try to lift my legs because lifting different things in different directions strengthens different things, of course. So I need to at least try to lift my legs away from the ground because then it works my glutes. Pushing my pubic bone down. And then I just continue. Whoa, look at that. Suddenly I can lift my legs. Haha. Take away the goal-oriented learning and I can get there by accident. That's a nice surprise. Pushing down to go up, the last few little things. Maybe making it bigger, making it juicier. Coming up into the vertical, melting down in different ways. Feeling what feels good. Tuning in with my whole body. Coming down in different ways. Melting into different sort of almost stretches. Just playing with my contact on the ground. Playing with one leg crossing over the other. Kind of got myself a bit stuck here. There we go, rolling. Rolling, rolling, rolling. If I find something I like, I see, can I replicate it on the other side? Giving my weight into the ground. I'm playing with crossing one ankle over the other thigh to open up the hip in a different way. Taking my pelvis and my legs side to side. Rolling, rolling, rolling. To bigger things. So what if I just finish taking my feet away from each other on the ground? So I've got here only through listening to my contact with the ground, and I'm still going to do that. I'm still going towards stretches but trying to resist pushing into them. So it might be that different people have to do a different amount of work in different places. So for somebody who's got less mobility in the hips, they'll need to do more work to support themselves with their upper body so that it's not a strain on the hips. You don't want to sink fully down into the hips. I'm still just moving and rolling, mobilizing, softening into the ground, finding something on one side, seeing if I can find an equivalent on the other side. Bending and lengthening the knees. There's no big pattern going on. Just bending and lengthening the knees. Shifting the weight. Shifting the weight is a natural kind of thing that's going on if I'm attending to how I'm making contact with the ground. So even if I went up into a very sort of familiar position, it looks like a technique of some kind. I'm feeling my contact against the ground, how I push down to go up, down to go up, down to go up. And variations on that down. How can I sink into the ground and push away from the ground? My hands, my head. So a bit more intentional mobilizing around the hips. I'm mobilizing around the spine, and now sitting with my legs in front of me, sweeping my weight side to side. I come back to using my own hands to help me feel where my legs are. And I want to do a last little bit of this kind of mobilizing leg stuff. And whenever I've got a free hand, I'm going to just take it to my leg to help me feel what's going on with my leg. I like that on that side, so I try to find it on the other side. And it's not the same on the other side at all, but I can find something. So I'm taking my hand to my leg, helping me feel what my leg is doing, helping me open in different ways. Breathing, letting go, and this, I'm aware this will look so different for everybody different, so it's just a matter of giving into the floor, pushing away from the floor, and seeing what's possible, pushing hands and feet into the floor. I know plenty of people who will want to just stay very softly between hands and knees. Maybe that's enough, just exploring how hands and knees push into the floor. And I know other people who will lever up into a handstand was no problem. So even that is, how do you push into the floor to go up? Everything, how do I push down to go up? The support of the floor. And I'm just going to finish, again lying on my back, rolling and giving in a little bit more. Kind of winding it down. I'm going to hold one foot and just see where the other leg can go. Keep it moving, keep the feet active, keep the fingers active, passing the same foot to the other hand. I'm doing it with a straight front leg, but it doesn't need to be. The front leg can be bent as well. Coming a twist through the spine, lifting and lowering my head, finding out what feels good. And then I cross over and hold the other leg. What feels good. And unwinding, softening into the ground. So I'm still doing the kind of hip mobilizing that I was doing in standing, but now with more of my body in contact with the ground. And all of this wriggliness that I've got, all of this wriggliness and rolling is coming from the center. Coming from the muscles that connect the ribs, muscles that connect the spine, or the vertebrae in the spine, the abdominals, the muscle that connects my ribs to my hip. So all of these things. Now I've got the second foot, but in the same side hand. I'm just rolling, seeing where it can go, what's possible in my hip. If I twist and wriggle through my center, and then another bloody alert on my phone, then I'm going to let go of both legs for a moment and just roll, letting my back and my belly rest completely, and then holding onto both legs and seeing what's possible if I hold onto both legs. So it could be both feet. There's infinite different ways I could hold on to the feet. I could have my feet flexed or pointed. I can think about what my belly is doing. And I'm going to just hold, rather than onto the feet necessarily, onto the legs. So just both hands connected to both legs. Internal, external rotation. Where can I go? Yeah, feet can come to the floor. And then to finish, just lengthening down and resting for the last time with my legs long. Noticing how I'm making contact with the floor. Scanning, sensing, opening up my field of awareness to take in as much as I can softly. Releasing my jaw, my eyes, my tongue. And I'm going to roll to one side and just finish standing. Let's see how that feels.
shifting my weight a little bit from one side to the other. Curious to see, how do I shift my center of gravity? Again, how do my feet feel the ground? And then just padding one foot into the floor and then the other. Letting myself twist a little bit through the center. Reach my arms in different directions. Shifting my weight, shifting my head, shifting my spine, reaching my arms, softening my ankles, knees and hips.